back to school for the kids.
It is back to school week. Big week. In fact, yesterday was my first day for my oldest because he's going into ninth grade. So they had freshmen only at the high school. And then today was the first day for my now 7th grader. So, Yikes.
Yep. 8th and, I guess junior 11th.
Yeah.
For my two. And there was much rejoicing around the house. Some, no more, I'm bored, what can I do?
You could go to school. Yeah.
Homework.
I will say that Shirley had to pick up my oldest at high school today, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, that is the worst parking lot in the entire history of parking lots."
Yes, it is. It is built to make sure you do not go fast.
Oh, yeah. Anyway.
Because it winds around.
Yeah. She said it was just total, utter gridlock.
Of course.
Because, yeah, they don't let you stop at the curbside where there's the fire lane, so you have to keep circling. And there's not a lot of places to circle. And so by the time you get another, 100 or 200 cars in there, she said it was basically solid.
Everybody just sitting.
And then nobody could get out. It's a dining philosopher's problem.
Yeah, eventually, give it a couple of weeks. Eventually, everybody figures things out.
Yeah.
But yeah, the first few weeks of school are always a nightmare.
It's gonna be rough. So, well, we'll see. I'm sure we'll get into a groove in another couple weeks, and well, it'll be fun. How was your weekend?
I had a great weekend. We hung out with the family, kind of did a few random things. Nothing big. Went for a bike ride. My daughter is a hostess at a local French restaurant, fancy French restaurant. So we went to dinner with my boy to his favorite Thai restaurant, and then stopped by the bakery of this French restaurant and discovered that as the parents of the employee, we got 50% off.
Oh.
So we had very, very tasty, very cheap desserts from it's a restaurant called La Provence. It was nice. So we kind of had a back to school treat.
Yum.
Yeah.
Yum. That's tasty. Tasty. Lots of bread, which is fantastic.
I'm a fan.
Me too. Well, let's see. So so it was a long weekend. We had, Monday off, but I spent 2 days fencing and 1 day down at the state fair.
Sorry, when I saw, here's how slow my brain was when I saw fencing in there.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the Olympic sport.
With rapiers.
What is fencing? Yes.
No, I think I'm going to be working on fencing for a couple of years, so I'll probably stop talking about it here sometime soon. But we got another stretch of fence stretched, I guess, actually, and then another whole section with the posts dug and the T-posts pounded, and I can't wait I should be pounding T-posts in the ground in like May when the ground is nice and soft, as opposed to August, September, when it is hard as a rock.
Right. So what was your favorite thing at the fair?
Oh, watching the chainsaw carver. We're high society around my place. But I really like I guess I like walking through kind of the vendors, just looking at all the stuff, and then Shirley really likes walking through the barns and watching some of the animal stuff. We watched a bunch of horse things, and we watched some cow judging stuff. And but I really like the artisan village generally. And one of the things they had there was something wood area. Anyway, they had a lumberjack show that I didn't get to see. But one of the things I did get a chance to sit and watch for 30 or 45 minutes was a chainsaw carver who basically was I guess carving with chainsaw and grinders, and he had the main thing, must have sketched it out the previous show, because it's the sort of thing that he's doing it at 11:30, 2:30, and 4:30, something like that, right? For a half hour, an hour, and so we got to see him basically finish up one. So spent a half hour with a chainsaw and then a half hour with various grinders and stuff like that and blow torches to kind of finish it off. And it was very cool. And evidently there's a Netflix special that he was on. So I've added that to my list of things to watch for when I always never watch TV. It's called Carver Kings on Netflix. So I was like,
and it's all about people who use chainsaws to carve things.
Evidently, I don't know. I haven't watched it yet, so I added it to my list. I'll check it out because that'd be fun. I could say, "Hey, I was near somebody famous."
I was near somebody with a Netflix show.
Exactly.
Which I'm pretty sure most people on planet Earth at this point, the 2 degrees of whatever it is for someone who's had a Netflix show anymore.
Yeah. None of the seven degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's the 2 degrees of Netflix.
Yeah.
Well, long tail.
All right. So we jump into some follow-up. I didn't have any this week.
I threw one thing into follow-up, which was a link that I saw from Azaria Labs it's kind of the first blog post in what should be a series of blog posts going in detail explaining kind of the methodologies behind how they discovered some of the vulnerabilities in iOS that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. So this was on episode 86. I had to go look that up. There was something about 6 iOS bugs that were released by Project Zero, and then this thread, this blog post that we'll link in here, was just about. So it's just about one of them. It's going to go through in detail how they found it, which I'm looking forward to reading. So I thought that I would go ahead and throw out the first post in this, and people can follow up if they want. And I will be looking for more posts in this series because it seems like a nice one. So that was my one piece of follow up that I threw in there this week.
All right.
How about topics? What you got for me?
So I had 2 topics. Basically, fraudsters, people who have come in, and we've talked about deepfakes videos before, right? I think we've talked about the videos that you see President Obama saying things that he's not actually saying, or some of the newer ones are taking movie clips from well-known movies and putting different actors' faces on the original actors. So I think one was The Shining. They had Jim Carrey instead of Jack Nicholson.
Right. Yep.
Well,
actually, if you want another one to look up, go look up Bill Hader and Tom Cruise on David Letterman. Because it's really good. Because basically, Bill Hader, Saturday Night Live, does impressions. And the cool thing about that one is every time he does an impression where he's talking like Tom Cruise in Tom Cruise's voice, they swap his face for Tom Cruise's face. And so it's like, and Tom Cruise was like, yeah, man. And so it totally turns into Tom Cruise. It's good. You should check it out.
I'll have to go find a link, sneak that link in here in the show notes. But so this one is an audio deepfake. So it wasn't a video deepfake, but it was a real-time audio deepfake where some criminals called up using some voice generation AI software to impersonate the boss of a guy.
Wow.
Of a German parent company that owns a UK-based company. So they faked the German CEO calling the British CEO and saying, "Hey, we need you to urgently wire funds to a supplier, and we'll get that guaranteed." And the British CEO, I guess, was okay. That I'm talking to the guy. He called me on the phone. It sounds about right. All right, I will go ahead and do that.
Wow.
So then, since that succeeded, they tried it again. And by the second time, the British CEO was like, oh, okay, now this is starting to sound fishy. And he didn't make the payment. But it turns out that the money got transferred to a air quote Hungarian supplier and it then got moved around all over the world. So this is still relatively new, and they haven't found the culprits of the crime, but this was using deepfakes to trick somebody into transferring money. So it's just kind of upping the ransomware bits there. Anyways, I thought it was a very interesting approach and idea.
But they were able to real time, kind of like one of those Darth Vader masks.
Yeah.
Speak, or what's like Google Translate.
Right. Real time have it sound exactly like the boss of the parent company, and his I guess the article says, it kind of had his same cadence, his same mannerisms that, it just sounded, and he thought it was him. And, probably something that has happened before, so not unusual, or not unusual enough to arouse suspicion the first time, but the second time is like, okay, now this is getting unusual. So
yeah,
I thought that one was pretty cool.
That's good. That's nice catch. Nice find.
And then the second article is a follow-up similar one where ransomware is back in a big way. And I think we've talked about it before as well, where the bad guys are now leveraging ransomware to go after cities and encrypt, cities and government.
Small governments that are not necessarily very sophisticated.
Right. Yeah. So someone who, the IT guy is probably also, the only IT guy on staff, or maybe he also doubles as something else, right? Smaller things. So this ransomware gang came in and tried to, broke into the IT department of a small city in, well, I assume it's small. Actually, I guess it's probably not that small. Massachusetts, and started putting some ransomware on their devices. And then the next day when they came in, the hackers had said, all right, we want a $5.3 million payout. That's what we want. Send us $5.3 million in Bitcoin. And the city came back after talking to their insurance company and says, we'll offer you $400,000. So they're negotiating with the ransomware gang.
Wow.
Trying to negotiate. And the ransomware gang said no or whatever. So the city said, fine, then we'll just restore from backups. So they had backups. It was just, I guess at that point, it was going to be cheaper to pay them to decrypt it than it would be to just do the backups, or they had done the calculation, this was in concert with their insurance,
right? The
city insurance company, and said, we can offer $400,000, or we're just going to restore from backups. And turns out they just restored from backups. This was about 150 machines, which apparently was only 4% of the total number of machines in the city. So I guess it's probably not that small a city. But one of the things that I caught in here, which I would be in trouble with, was they said, the officials said things could have been much worse, but the attackers hit during the night, and they have most of the city systems get turned off at night. So you can't spread ransomware if there's no power on the machine. And so they came in, found it, segregated those 150 some odd machines. And so it could have been much worse, but luckily they had their machines turned off. I don't think I've turned off a computer in years. I always just let them go to sleep and then open the lid or hit the space bar. So there's a ransomware defense I'm sure is being worked into some insurance companies. The rider that they put on there is you must turn your machines off when not in use or something.
Machines must be off for 16 hours a day. That's funny. The quote in here that says, even knowing they couldn't pay, Mayor Mitchell said the city decided to engage in a conversation with the hackers so IT staff would have more time to bolster the city's defenses and protect their network. I decided to make a counteroffer using insurance proceeds in the amount of $400,000, which I determined to be consistent with ransoms recently paid by other municipalities. Yowza.
Yeah, I don't get we're going to engage in conversations so we could have the staff time to bolster the city's defenses. I guess they just needed to find how they got in.
All right.
Maybe that's it. Give them time to find out how they ended up inside.
Do more isolation of systems, I'm sure.
Right.
Well, anyway, that's another
ransomware. It's not going away. I think we're, being as cities are kind of the targets, I think we're going to have some interesting cases coming up in the upcoming elections, which are a lot of them are run, if not the voting systems, the recording and the saving and the storing and records and all that stuff. That's all online somewhere.
Could be interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, so long as they're getting paid, it's only going to happen more.
Yep. Anyways, those are my two. What you got?
Well, speaking of hackers, no, this is a different kind of hacker though. My first one was actually I thought I saw an announcement, but then when I was out here, it says this account's been open since 2017. So maybe I'm confused. But what I saw was Google Play Security Reward Program. And I think the deal that I saw was that it was extended to other applications. I think that's the new bit about this. So basically, Google Play is extending Google's monetary support for finding vulnerabilities to significant apps on their platform. So, and I think that if an app has like 100 million downloads or something like that, then it's automatically eligible, and otherwise you can apply to basically be in this. But I thought this was particularly interesting because, you know, Google's basically putting their money behind the platform for safety, right? But it's a little bizarre because it's so, I mean, even if the platforms, you know, has relatively secure defaults, you know, if you have insecure code, it's, you know, if you develop vulnerability in your application, you can still do that even if the platform underneath is quote unquote well sandboxed, et cetera, et cetera. So I thought this was really interesting. Did you know this existed?
Not as such. I mean, I knew Google had. I think I saw the same thing you did. That they were extending it to apps.
Yeah.
But I'd never actually gone to the page and looked up the HackerOne information and looked at what kind of things and costs and or payouts and that kind of stuff.
So this is cool. I'm kind of happy that this exists. I think I mean, you know, goodness knows Apple could use one for the Mac still, eh? But anyway, so this was cool. So they have, for example, different rewards. So this is all hosted on HackerOne, which is kind of a independent platform for vulnerability disclosure and brokers, basically bug bounty programs. So this, you know, if you find a remote code execution, $20,000. But I thought that you would appreciate the last line underneath that. Are you looking at that article?
I'm just reading it.
I thought you'd like that. It says, please note, executing arbitrary JavaScript does not qualify for the remote code execution category. Oh, I thought that was
half the planet went, yeah. Oh.
Exactly. So anyway, that's kind of cool. So the definition of remote code is, for example, attacker gaining full control, meaning code can be downloaded from the network and execute arbitrary native ARM code in the same process as the affected app. So $20,000. That seems to be the high one. Theft of private data is $3,000. Access to protected app components is $3,000. There are other sort of smaller things. So issues already known to Google, but that can be used to find similar apps or known issues get like, you know, $500 a piece, something like that. So anyway, I thought that was kind of cool. And it's a, you know, significant amount of money too. I mean, this, you know, Google Play Security Reward Program has paid out $283,000 in, well, total, of which $93,000 has been paid in the last 90 days. So, and that's $93,000 for 200 reports, or actually it says 158 reports resolved. Oh, that's not necessarily in the last 30 days. So that doesn't really say what I lied. It does say the average bounty is $1,000. The top bounty was $5,000. So evidently nobody's submitted a remote code execution through this program yet.
Right, because that's like that's like the max. But depending on what it is and how they judge it, and there's a whole way they judge it, then it can be up to 3,000, up to 20,000, up to whatever.
Correct. Exactly. So, but I think it's cool that Google's extending this to vulnerabilities in the top apps on their platform, because really that's a vulnerability waiting to happen.
Well, but it does also mention that it's the top apps of participating developers. So I assume the developers of those apps, because I was looking through the list of apps, tier 1 and tier 2, and it doesn't seem like the top N apps. It seems a little arbitrary to me on some level. But apparently, at least if I'm reading that right, it's apps developed by participating developers. So at some point, you as a developer had to say to Google, yes, I'm willing to join you with your HackerOne bug bounty program.
Yeah, and there are requirements too that the developer of the app has to have a vulnerability reporting mechanism, agree to work diligently to have the vulnerabilities, fixed in a reasonable time frame. There's requirements by the developer. It was kind of the weird thing for me was that it says all vulnerabilities must be reported directly to the app developer first, and then you request sort of a payout from this program once the vulnerability is resolved. So it's kind of funny. I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like the management of this would be a little bit weird, but I'm glad it exists. Anyway, that was my first thing. And then my second is a little bit more of like developer-y than security-y, but this is a post by Werner Vogels, who's the CTO of Amazon, on developing modern applications. So this, I know I've watched some keynote. I think I watched the keynote by him maybe for the last couple of reInvents, at least for the last reInvent. Have you watched him talk or just?
Yeah, I've seen him a couple of times.
But anyway, so this article is kind of a primer for modern application development, I guess, in terms of just sort of the basics, but with a bit of a bit of personal, personality injected into it for what the experience was at Amazon themselves. So
the article seems pretty dense.
It's definitely like the font's pretty small.
It's not a light read. It doesn't. I'm skimming through it because I haven't read it. So I was, I need to actually use my brain to read this article as opposed to skim through and get the gist of it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's a little bit denser, but the things that I appreciated about this was the 5 things he calls out of modern elements in a successful modern application architecture. So microservices, purpose-built databases, automated software release cycle, serverless operational model, and continuous security. So security's in there. So this kind of qualifies for mostly security, but he goes into each one of these. So microservices is it's not a new concept, certainly in the development community, but the real meat behind microservices is have components that are able to be developed by a small team, released by a small team, and scale themselves up or down without quote unquote dependencies.
Right.
So he uses the example of a shopping cart, and for example, a shopping cart service you might need to scale up if there's a sale going on. He talks a little bit in here about the packaging of services, whether you use containers or Lambda functions, but really it's about dividing and conquering, which is a paradigm for problem solving that works in many, many, many domains. Purpose-built databases, the intent of this, and the really critical thing that I feel is important here is that if you try to have a single database in a sort of a large monolith application, it becomes a single point of failure that's really, really hard to turn into not a single point of failure to scale out.
Right.
And in general, it's hard or impossible for a single database to meet the specific needs. This is a quote here. It's hard for a single database to meet the specific needs of a set of varied microservices. So, in general, the best database is a database that does exactly what the microservice needs. And that could be a graph database. It could be a in-memory database. It could be, basically a stream of something like Kafka or something like that.
Right.
Anyway, it's data goes with the service. And then the third thing was the software delivery pipelines. This is one of the things that's such a hot button for me because I feel like the cloud deployment models today where you have continuous delivery and you can ship something to production within a small order unit time is so clearly a better way to go overall that it's I don't think it's something that, let's see, what's a better way to phrase that? It's so evolutionarily advantageous that it's going to make other models of deployment obsolete. So I feel like it's one of those situations where it's so clearly better that the sort of classic software delivery models days are numbered. And Chrome's proving this out or has proved this out and others are following their lead that it doesn't have to just be for cloud. It can be for, software that gets deployed to endpoints as well. So what's the fourth one? Serverless as possible. I love some of his quotes in here. We've talked about serverless on this podcast before. I'm a fan, obviously. But this is what I liked. When we say serverless, we're referring to services that run without the need for infrastructure provisioning and scaling, have built-in availability and security. It's not just Lambda, it's the entire application stack. And typically there's three components. I'm sort of paraphrasing a little here. A compute service, so that's where the functions actually run. Data stores like MySQL or Postgres that are run as a service, which is, of course, this is the CTO of AWS saying this. So, of course, he's using AWS services that are available on a sort of per operation basis. And finally, an integration layer, something like an event bus or in the AWS case, event bridge. So something to move data and allow you to trigger actions and scale out your the other parts of this application. So I'm a huge serverless fan in many ways, not the least because maybe the best way to phrase it is because if you're calling a function, you're calling a function because somebody asked you to. And so if it costs you, a penny to execute the function, which in reality is, a millionth of a penny to execute a function or something along those lines, that you're doing it in service of a customer or in service of some end for which, presuming you're a for-profit company, you will be getting paid. And so, you're just far better off to know that everything that's being done is being done in the service of something moving you forward, as opposed to, keeping a data center warm with a rack of servers.
Right.
You see this same sort of value-based billing in other industries too. I've read articles about, forklift companies that don't charge by the hour or by the forklift. You don't buy the forklift, but you can pay per pound lifted, basically. I think GE in some cases will quote unquote sell engines, but you don't buy the engine outright and then maintain it. You pay per mile traveled or amount of freight hauled for a train engine or something like that, and that way it allows a company to really specialize in something and essentially offload offload the non-critical parts of their infrastructure. And in fact, he used the same quote in here that a guy down at work, our work, uses all the time. So I don't know who originated it, but I like to give him on credit for this. But undifferentiated heavy lifting.
Yeah,
those are work that has to be done, but it doesn't really move you forward. And so anytime you can avoid doing heavy lifting that isn't in direct service of the business, take advantage. So things like, his quote in here, things like server management, load balancing, applying security patches. If you're able to abstract away the actual infrastructure and use serverless to do that, you can save a whole lot of pain and suffering. But you're doing that by offloading, essentially to a service provider that aspect. Anyway, the final thing in this article is security being everyone's responsibility. And this is something that also really resonates with me, which is that you can't just apply security after the fact to an application. It has to be done during the development cycle, during the continuous release process, and isn't the responsibility of a server or of an InfoSec team at the end of the day coming and auditing a service for whether you've done everything right. I mean, it's something that has to be built into the services that as they're developed and as they're deployed. So
yep.
Anyway, I really like this article. Yeah, I guess it was dense, but there's a lot of stuff in here, a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I'll have to read it maybe tomorrow after I wake up.
Did I just put you to sleep? Okay.
No,
It's fine.
It's too long to try to read tonight.
Wait till my something fun. Okay, I won't. Evidently, I'm being what's a fancy word for trying to make myself sound smart? I don't know. This week, because all right, give me your something fun, because that seems pretty geeky too, dude.
All right, so you got to go to Regex, right? Regular expressions. If you do any kind of development whatsoever, you have hopefully encountered and use regular expressions. Regular expressions are used to help you acquire, search for, find stuff using using characters to help you find things. Anyways, this regexcrosswords.com is a way to play a game with Regex. So if you go to regexcrosswords.com and you can start with the tutorial, basically you have two regex statements and they cross. It's hard to describe this over.
I'm doing
just audio, right? You say, all right, is A or B and A or Z? Well, those are the regex symbols, the or symbol. So between those two, what's the correct answer? Well, the correct answer is A. And then you go to the next one. Right? You can validate that one and go to the next one. And it's all right. Now we're going to do character ranges. What should be the right answer? So the tutorial has very simple ones. If you get out of the tutorial and even just the beginner ones, then you start to get some entertaining ones of how do I? It's I don't know how to describe the game. But it's fun. It kind of teaches you about regular expressions and makes your brain think about, all right, if I've got this and this or here, you're trying to evaluate two different regular expressions and determine what the outcome, what is the same between the two different regular expressions. Right.
I don't know. So I just finished the 7th one of the little tutorial. Sorry, while you were talking. And so far, those seem pretty easy.
Yeah.
But
yeah. The tutorial ones are easy.
Okay.
But when you jump over to intermediate, then it's not just a 1x1 grid. It's a 2x3 grid or a 3x3 grid.
Oh, I get what you mean by regex crossword. Okay. So I gotta go back. How do I get back to home? I see. So hold on. I see. So it's kind of like Sudoku.
Yeah, sort of, I guess.
But where every cell you have to, and it's always only one character per cell.
Correct.
Huh. Okay.
Anyways,
Cool.
That's my something
I'll check
fun.
it out.
I stumbled across this. I was doing some other regular expression poking around earlier today and stumbled across this and thought, oh, that's actually kind of cool.
Regex Crossword.
Regexcrossword.com.
Okay. That's cool. All right. Well, the tutorial was, I whipped through the first few in the tutorial, but maybe I'll have to go try one of the harder ones there.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. I won't torture you to do that while we're recording. So I evidently had a dearth of something fun this week because I only threw one link in there, and I was like, well,
I can never remember. Is dearth good or bad?
Bad generally, unless it's a dearth of bad things, in which case I guess that would be kind of like a double negative, and that would be good.
Dearth is one of those words that I can never, every time I hear that word, I have to think, now, is that a negative connotation or is that a positive connotation?
Yeah, definitely negative.
All right.
So this is a presentation that was done by Chris Latner of Google, but not really of Google fame. I guess you'd say he was. What would you say he's most famous for?
Compilers.
Yes, definitely.
He's an Apple guy. Swift.
Yeah, I mean
Apple Swift is probably what
he developed. LLVM. The low-level virtual machine. I think that's what LLVM stands for. But basically, compiler infrastructure, and then built the Clang or CLang compiler on top of that, and was paid by Apple. I think he worked at Apple for many years, but doing open source compiler work. And then he was responsible for developing the Swift language while he was at Apple, and was one of the is he the only compiler person that's been up on an Apple keynote? I'm pretty sure. He's probably the most technical person that's ever been up on an Apple keynote, would be my guess. But anyway, he's done it. He's had at least 3 home runs in his work career so far, but he's working on a 4th. And he left Apple to go to Tesla, actually. This was a couple years ago. And
didn't last long.
And he didn't last very long there. I don't know exactly what happened. I never really saw any dirt about that. Maybe it exists and I just wasn't paying attention. But now he's at Google and he's working on TensorFlow, which is the machine learning library that was done by Google. And evidently he's working on compiler stuff for TensorFlow, essentially, which kind of makes sense because TensorFlow is basically a domain-specific language on top of multiple backends that can execute the code. And this is a presentation that he gave. Actually, I'm not sure what talk this is at. It says Compilers for Machine Learning Workshop, CGO 2019. But this is the MLIR primer, which is intended to stand for multi-level intermediate representation, which is a compiler term for an intermediate representation is something that you take a source language to and you compile it to an intermediate representation before you actually target a given architecture. It's kind of the reason it's intermediate is because it lets you do platform independent optimizations at the IR level, and then you can target multiple platforms. So if you're compiling for an ARM CPU and a x86 CPU, you can use the same compiler infrastructure to go from the same language, go to the same intermediate representation, do tons of optimizations and everything else on that. And then, at the very last step, target the actual architecture that the code needs to run on. And this is actually the same infrastructure that's being used by Swift and the phone apps to basically send up the intermediate representation to the App Store now so they can target other platforms. Right. Anyway, that's a whole bunch of background stuff that is not actually about this something fun. But this something fun is kind of cool, which is how to do essentially a compiler for machine learning that is pluggable. So that's why the MLIR is multi-level, is they can basically have an extensible intermediate representation that is more flexible. So this is basically Chris's second or third chance to sort of redo or work on, an infrastructure that, he gets to take some of the learnings that he had from CLang and do it differently, and from Swift, and do it again and do it better, or even better. So anyway, check out especially if you're a compiler geek, which I guess I can't really qualify because there's a bunch of stuff in here I totally did not understand. But I thought this was still cool. Something I'll have to, another thing to keep my eye on.
Yeah, I am definitely not a compiler person. And I started rolling through the PDF slide deck and I quickly got lost. So
I did have to look up some of the acronyms, honestly.
Yeah.
Doesn't help that it's about a realm that I'm only tangentially familiar with in terms of TensorFlow. So, but anyway, still, I wonder if this was actually recorded. If so, it'd be fun to watch. So,
alrighty.
All right, there you go. My something fun. I guess
call it a show.
I guess we call it a show. It's getting late. It's up again early for school tomorrow morning.
Yes.
All right, dude. Have a good night. I will talk to you next week.
All right. See you.
Bye.
Bye.